But welcome everybody. I'm Ben Fonville, piano coordinator at Amaro Music, and we've got a great panel, hopefully to have a great discussion tonight. I thought I'd just kind of set the context for how we got to here, and again, just thank everybody for coming in. I'll start off, I think the most important thing to say right now is just, we hope everybody, your families, your students, that you are all staying safe and healthy. And just on a personal level, if there's anything you need, even if it's not piano teaching related, our team members at Amaro live in these communities, and we really consider ourselves neighbors. So if you don't have somebody to call, please reach out. Don't be a stranger. This is certainly unprecedented times, and we just want to be good neighbors. I think at the end of the day, that's all that matters, not anything else. But the webinar tonight, how we got here. Right now at Amaro, I've challenged our team, with our front door shut. In addition to our own professional development, I've asked every member of the team to look for ways to support the local teaching community. Education is our own roots. Almost 100 years ago, in fact, 100 years next year, we were founded as a piano teaching studio, and still today we share a lot of the same goals as you. We're proud that every single member of our piano team shares a professional music or an education background. We just believe that the more music makers, the better for everyone. So, as we were just checking in with teachers, we heard what we sensed at least was a need. I hope it kind of resonated. We talked to probably 40 or 50 teachers about a week and a half ago. And a lot of folks are getting, the transition into teaching online lessons, but realizing it's not the same as teaching face-to-face. There's things that have to be adapted. There's things we have to think about. And we also just heard a big mix of comfort levels. Some folks are excited at new possibilities. And then we also had a lot of other questions just saying, where do I start? So that's really kind of the impetus for tonight's event. Just hopefully an opportunity to learn from each other through a good discussion. I was talking with our panelists earlier. I think our goal tonight is not necessarily how do we do this, period. Our goal is how do we do this well? How do we really make sure that our students can benefit as much as possible, and as close as possible to the same experience that we provide when they're there on the bench next to you. So for about the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to dig a little deeper. We're going to explore some topics that, once you're up and running with the basics, we can ensure that that time in these online lessons is as effective as possible. How can we help students achieve the highest levels of learning and performance? That's the goal tonight. So to hear how we're answering, that thing. So I will preface this, and hopefully everybody is, comfortable with the basics of the technology. If you're not, please reach out, to us at the store or to a fellow teacher who is. We did send out a link about a week and a half ago with some just basics. Here's some suggestions for where to start. Here's some good equipment. Here's, ideas for placement. Here's some things to be thinking about. And so if you need that email again or some direction, we can certainly provide that. But tonight, I think we'll focus in on a little bit more of these, higher level thoughts. Do want to give everybody near the end an opportunity if you've got questions or comments, things you can add to the discussion, or a question you'd like the panel to answer. Near the bottom of the screen, you'll notice a Q&A button down there. There is a chat box, and we do have CJ monitoring that just to help with any questions, technical things. But if you've got a question for the panel, if you'll use that Q&A box, that'll allow us just to quickly hammer through those for about the last 10 or 15 minutes of the conversation. And look forward to some great comments, great thoughts, things like that. So let's get started. I think the first thing we can do is just jump right in. Panel, if we'll just take a minute. Stacy, you're at the top on my screen here. Why don't we all just take about 20 seconds and just introduce us, tell a little bit about your studio, where you're at, and then turn it over to the next folk.
My name is Stacy McVeigh, and I have a studio in the Bartlett area, and my studio is primarily special needs students and young students. So most of my focus has been on how to keep attention and things like that during this transition time.
Great.
Okay, I'm Pam Watkins. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Pam Watkins. I have 23 students, and I'm in the Cordova area. And I've been teaching for about 38 years. And that's me.
Great. All right.
I'll go. My name is Jim Cornfoot. I'm the Director of Music Ministries for Evergreen Presbyterian Church. And I also have a private piano studio with about 35 students, ages 5 to adult, from baby beginner to a high school senior who's preparing a senior recital with Mozart, Debussy, Rachmaninoff, and everything in between. The focus for my studio is focusing on music literacy and technique in the classical style.
Great. Thanks, Jim.
I'm Sandy Triplett. I have a studio, a small studio of children, younger children through high school, but I mainly teach adults, and I have a studio in Germantown.
Fabulous. So we've got a big mix of location and just kind of emphasis on, you know, different ages and different segments of the piano playing world. So I think we've got a lot of diversity in here. Well, I'll just start it. I'll throw the question out there. Sandy, why don't you kick us off? How about, you know, just give us an update real quick. How's your studio doing? You know, what's the feeling among your families and your students right now?
As from my perspective and from what I can feel from, it's all good. Everybody understands this is momentary. It's an irritant, but it's momentary. This will pass. Some of my moms that have 4 kids in a family, they kind of see it a little bit differently. But most everybody's just kind of hunkered down and moving forward. I'm finding it, and my students are finding it. This is fabulous. We have time to practice. Woohoo!
Hey, that's a good thing. Well, anybody else? Jim, what's your studio? How are they feeling through this process?
Yeah, I think much like Sandy, the kids are, as best as they're able, especially my middle school and high school students, they are understanding that this is a weird time. I actually talked with one of my students who's a sophomore in high school, and I felt comfortable telling him, like, I was your age when 9/11 happened, and this is going to be your 9/11 story. So I can tell, though, that some of my younger students are starting to wear on them, that they can't see their friends, that they miss school, they miss being with their kids, and their classmates. But like Sandy, some of my students are doing their very best work I've ever heard them do in this time.
Wow. Okay. Stacy, Pam, kind of similar responses. Anything different?
Well, I've noticed the same thing with my students, is that they are totally ready for their lessons. They've got their markers, their pencils, and they do more theory now than they've ever done. So it's been great.
I'm getting reactions all over the place from my students. So with my studio being mostly special needs students, I have some students who are adamantly keeping track of statistics, some students who are crying because they can't come to my house, and then some students who were just out of sorts because of their routine. But overall, like, generally, like, I think the online lessons and consistency of keeping with the routine, at least having that piano lesson every week, and it's been very interesting to hear all of their different takes on exactly what's going on in the world.
I spoke to one teacher who mentioned that, you know, I've got students that are, you know, I think I'm paraphrasing, but saying, you know, hey, I've got students who are telling me that, you know, this is what's getting them through this experience is their music. So is that a universal for your students, everybody? Jim,
Yes.
you're saying it? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, another, you know, a question I heard a lot from some folks is maybe we can all take a moment. What's your special setup for online lessons in your studio? Are you using special equipment? Are you just pointing at the piano and going? You know, how do you go about your thought process at designing that internet online lesson so that your student can be, you know, effective from a distance?
I think in the big picture, especially if there's a totally new venue, you know what? You can do this with your cell phone. Don't get bent out of shape about it. Get your phone going, contact, your students in whatever way that you can contact them, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom. Find something that works for you that you feel comfortable. And even if there's those glitches, which are going to happen, laugh about it. Say to the student, gosh, you went away again. Hang on, you'll be back. But I think it's okay to have one phone, let that work. You can pick it up, put it over your keyboard as your hand's playing. So I don't think you have to go into this crazy, oh my goodness, I need this and this and this. No, you don't. You got a cell phone, start there. The more, if you may find that if we keep going forward, that at some point you may want other technology, but I really believe you can do it with just a single cell phone.
Thanks, Sandy. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I'm on my tablet. I stopped using a laptop years ago because I'm a millennial and I don't do laptops. So I'm going to show you what I do. My tablet sits on that djembe right there. And I position it so it could be any number of angles. The way I had it when this meeting started was that it could face the keys. Much like Sandy just said, I love that I can switch the camera and put my hand over the keys and say something to a student like, all right, I want you to play a C chord, then bring your hand up for the F chord, and then come back to the C chord. I can show them that directly in a way that it's kind of hard to do with, with your, in-person lessons. I also did invest, sorry, I'm gonna show one more thing. If you see that, that's an iPhone stand. And for a variety of reasons, this may be where I go next. This only costs about 20 bucks on Amazon. So lots of flexibility there, but you don't need to do that. Just like Sandy said, this drum and my tablet has kept my studio operational for the last 3 weeks. That's it. And it was also very important for me to say in the very first set of online lessons, this is what it's gonna be like for now. It's gonna be different. It's not gonna be what it normally is, but you know what? We're just gonna do the best we can and we're gonna keep working like everything is normal.
Great, thank you. Hey, Pam.
Hey, and of course I'm the techie girl, so I didn't keep it simple. I've got an HP computer and a standalone camera that I can use it for different angles. And I use the Roland LX7 for my piano, and I use Classroom Maestro. And that shows you the keyboard, shows you a staff, grand staff, or you can use the treble or bass staff, so that the students can see their notes and things of that nature. And then I can also use my iPhone and toggle and show them the pedals or show them the keys also.
Okay.
Well, I've probably made it maybe a little more complicated, but I'm on my laptop. That's what I'm using right now for the camera. Above my piano, I have just an inexpensive webcam. I actually just posted on Facebook. Anybody got a webcam they're not using? I could use one. And it was super easy to use. So with the webcam up there, I just easily kind of toggle back and forth. I don't know if see, there's my keyboard. And you can toggle back and forth between that. But I also have my iPad hooked up to the same laptop. And the neat thing about the iPad is that it allows me to basically whatever I have in iBooks as a PDF, it will allow you to look at it. I'll show you. Oh, I can't do the screen sharing. Okay, never mind. But it will allow you to share your screen and look and mark the music along with your student. So as long as you have whatever your music that you're using, like in your iPad on a PDF, you can use your stylus, circle, mark, and things like that along with your student. So that's my primary setup, and then I use my iPad also to play games, and I put it on the screen. So, but my primary focus being mostly a special education teacher, is being able to rapid fire switch from one thing to the other to hold attention.
Wow. Okay, that's a great setup. So what I'm hearing is, we've got some folks who are saying, hey, keep it simple. And then, here's my setup and I'm using multiple cameras. I think the commonality that I heard from everybody though is use what you know how to use. You play to your strengths here in this. If you're not comfortable with the idea of lots of equipment, well then probably don't go out and try to use lots of equipment. Just keep it simple in a way that you can be successful with. Everybody has a phone and you can tap the screen, the camera button, and that can get you through it as you learn the ropes. So it's okay to, would you, I feel like everybody would agree, we can wade into this. We don't have to just jump, 4 feet forward all at once there.
Don't be scared to try anything new, because I was shocked at how simple it was to just, with the camera, I just literally plugged it into the laptop and I was like, oh, there it is. That's how it works. So, but before I tried it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's got to be so complicated. So.
Well, here's a question. What about yours? While we're talking, everybody's kind of talking about just how the camera stuff. What about your students? Is there anything special or, that you ask, for your students? Where do you want them to position their camera where, for you? Pam?
I usually like to have the camera situated so that it's looking at the keyboard and the person, like I'm sitting now. So I try to get them to do that, but I do find that sometimes they don't understand. So you've got, I wish I could just go over there and set it up for them, but I can't.
Is your camera where you would sit in a face-to-face lesson?
Is my camera where I would sit? Yeah.
Like the view we're seeing. So that's, one way I've heard some teachers, if that'd be an easy way to articulate it.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, that's what I told my clients is I want you to set up the camera as though I were sitting there. And actually one of my clients, one of the few that I do house calls to, they literally pull up the chair that I normally sit in and they say, we're setting up your chair, we're putting your phone there. Like they took it quite literally. For me, what's most important is that I can see the majority of the keys. I don't need to see all of them, I need to see the majority of them. And I need to see the student in profile because I want to be able to look at their feet if they're pedaling. But this is a great opportunity, y'all, to really work on your ear and your ear training, from my perspective. Yes, it is important that we see the keys, but it is equally important that we're using our ears to determine whether or not they're playing the right notes as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's move on to the next question. Stacy, why don't you kick us off on this one? So with online lessons, would you say that how you prepare for these lessons is different than when students are coming to your studio for face-to-face lessons? Or what do you have to do differently? Oh, I think you're muted, Stacy. Sorry.
Here we go. I do quite a bit more prep work for my online lessons than I do in my studio because a huge part of teaching younger students and special needs students is being able to transition and keep the lesson active. And so in my studio, I have things like drums, this and that, just all right at my fingertips. And so I have to think of ways before I start the lesson to mimic those kinds of activities in an online format. And so sometimes, and one of the things that I did with my studio, because I knew there was going to be a learning curve in just bringing the lessons online, I kind of backtracked a little bit. Everything I gave the students the very first week of their lessons was brand new, and it was easy. Like I made sure we were basically doing review and easy stuff. So there was some prep work that I did like that, and just keeping track of where we are from week to week and what I need for each lesson. But but I would say like mostly it's been in the forms of creating like online games, online tools, various different kinds of activities. This right here, here's your sticker. We love to take the sticker. Meow. So just different kinds of just fun things that keep their attention, and just brainstorming all that out ahead of time.
That's great. Sandy, what about you?
The same thing. I think when we're used to teaching hand, next to them, most of us are seasoned teachers, and we've taught this repertoire over and over. So we're kind of comfortable. We know what the next page is going to be. But I have found I've had to be a little more attuned in my words to make sure that I've got words that are expressing what I'm wanting to do, where normally I would reach over, put your hand on top of my hand, here, watch me do this. I still do a lot of the demoing, but it's totally different. And I'm learning to be very particular on the words that I use. And if you know me, slowing down has been very important for me, so that I'm not speaking like I normally speak, which is at, I don't know, presto in most cases. So preparing in advance how I'm going to introduce the next technique with better wording than I think, which for me on the other side of all this crazy, I think it's only going to be a positive for me.
That's great. Pam, Jim, anything to add?
I'll add, I know some teachers have expressed to you, Ben, a concern about, do I need to buy my own copies of music my students have? And I did proactively buy, if I didn't already have it, just the core lesson book in the Faber, I'm a Faber guy, the core lesson book in that curriculum. I didn't buy the whole suite because I don't need another music library. But I went ahead and bought that, and I write the name of each student. You probably do this in your students' books anyways, but I wrote the name of each student and the date that a piece was assigned in the music, so that I could keep track of who's working on what. For my intermediate and my advanced students, I already had copies of most of the music that they're working on, like some other teachers have said. But what's really great is because now that we have a 2-piano setup, which is ideal in my world for teaching, I've gone back, since I can model and demo here for the student on the other end of the line, part of my lesson prep now is actually practicing this music again, like as if I were preparing for a recital too. Whereas in the past, like I can't demo on one piano the way I would like to, because that's time consuming to switch benches. Now I'm going back and saying, okay, I got a kid working on the 12 variations of All the I need to go back and relearn that inside and out for his sake too. And then the other thing that I'll say is, I'm not ashamed to not ask, but request clearly to my clients, hey, I need you to scan that piece and mail it to me, or email it to me. I don't care if you take a picture, use an app, whatever you have. I need you to take a picture of it, because then that does two things. It makes sure I have a copy of it, and it makes sure the parent knows that's what their kid is supposed to be working on.
Great. Okay, well, how about the parents' involvement in the lesson process? How has online lesson, moving to this online format changed? Does it require more? Are you asking the parents to do different things? Pam, what do you think?
Well, with my intermediate advanced students, the parent may have to just ask this or remind the student when to log on for their lesson. But for the younger kids, the parents need to be in the room. So I've got a 4-year-old. That's challenging because I can't be there to have her put her hands where they need to go. So the parent, this one particular parent, she steps right in and she does a bulk of what I would have done if we had lessons one-on-one. And that works out really good. And then with the beginner students, the parents just need to be at ear's length in case, they've got a behavior issue or something like that. But the parents have stepped up and done really well.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's the same for me. I asked my
my piano moms who have kids 8 and younger for at least the first couple of lessons. We're now in week 3 of online learning, to sit in. And some still do, and I'm grateful for that. But some of my 6, 7, 8-year-olds, they're self-sufficient. You know, they kind of don't want their mom sitting in, and I'm really grateful for that. Like they stay on task. Some of them do.
So know your student, so that way you know what it may not be a one-size-fits-all approach, would be kind of my takeaway from the 2 comments there. So Jim, you mentioned, you know, taking pictures of music and email into that. How about written theory assignments? Anything that you would normally review in person? How are you guys handling that? Is that just, hey, scan it before? Have you just dropped it totally?
No, I send, if they have a theory book, if they have something they're working in, I tell them, okay, now they're getting 2 pages a week. 2 pages a week, their job is to scan it when they get through with it, or picture it, whatever they're using. Send it to me before the next lesson so that I can look it over, see if we've got questions. And then if it is, I'll be honest with you, we all know that they don't always do their theory. So a lot of my kids may not have a theory book, but there's so much information that's out there that right now I'm sending out theory pages, you know, note speller pages. And I've put that to my parents. I'm saying, I know I'm sending more things out now than I normally have because of school. I would never expect you, in the real world, I would love for this to be our real world in the sense of time. We don't have this kind of time, but now you do. So sending out an extra note speller page for the kid to do, because they do have the time to do it. And I think it was Pam, she was saying that her kids are practicing more now. You know, she's really seeing some positive results. So yeah, I just send it on. It's like everything else. This isn't an option. This is just part of the program, and just rolling with it. And I don't make a big deal about it. This is just part of it, and just roll.
That's great. Stacy, you look like you might be saying something, or about to.
That's one of the things that I use my iPad for in the lesson. I download different theory games, different theory pages, and you can use things like, if you have your iPad, you can use like Sprout Beat or different apps to play games during the lesson. And then a lot of times, if we do like 5 minutes of like, a lot of my students like this little flash note derby game, which is kind of like a note spelling flashcard game. You know, if we do 5 minutes or so at the end of the lesson, the parents are like, well, oh, what is that app? And then, oh, well, this is the app, and only $2. Download that, and they can play that, you know, 3 or 4 days a week. Or but I use a lot of apps and online, but most of my students are beginner to late beginner. So we're not doing a whole lot of advanced theory. My students that are doing more advanced theory, we're still just working through theory books, and I just have a paper copy of the book here.
Okay. Well, oh yeah, go ahead, Pam.
I was going to say one thing, and it was when it comes to preparing for the student, or what does the student have to do. And one thing I found with advanced students is you cannot hear what they're playing, or at least I can't with my internet. So I have them send me a video of what they've played, and then I listen to it, critique it, and then during the lesson, then we can go through that video that they sent and then work on the little parts. But it is very difficult for me to hear what they're playing with the sound quality.
So having it pre-recorded gives you a better snapshot of what they're able to do. Okay, there's a good idea. Is anybody else doing that? I'm seeing some nodding.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing with because I agree with you. I can hear it, but it's not the clarity. I keep saying, are you hitting an E flat with that? Because I just can't quite, and even with their angle, yes, I love Pam's angle, the way she's sitting, because that's exactly the angle I would want my students to give me. But for some of them, for whatever reason, that's not viable. So I can't quite see the way their hands go in and out. So yeah, I'm with you with having those kids, even early intermediate. If I'm just having questions, instead of me being a goober going, can you do that again, and again, so I can hear it, I'll just ask them, hey, can you record that for me? And that's twofold, because they're going to record it until it's done well before they send it to me, because they don't want me to talk to them the next week about the recording that wasn't as well as we know it could be. So that's been a real plus, actually.
That's interesting.
Sandy, that's actually a really good point, because how many times have we all heard in lessons our students say like, oh, I don't sound like this when you're not here, And I had not even thought about that. That's really smart. I will say, I haven't gotten to the point where I feel the need to ask students to send a pre-recorded version, but here's what I've learned about technology and apps. I like FaceTime best. I'm an Apple guy. FaceTime for me has provided the most clear audio in a live online lesson. With Zoom, it's been my experience both on the giving end, and every once in a while I get some coaching from Dr. Tom Bryant over at Rhodes College. We've had to back our cameras away. I've got a buddy of mine on faculty at Rhodes who teaches in the computer science department, and his focus is computer science and music. So he's been a very helpful resource for me. And there is something about Zoom's audio technology
Absolutely.
that does not like piano and music. It's an echo cancellation thing.
Yes.
So if you use Zoom, please be aware that the way that they've constructed their app is not conducive to piano lessons in terms of the audio, especially receiving it from the student, which is made interesting for online worship services as well. That said, I still like Zoom. For me, a lot better than Skype. I just don't like that at all.
That's true.
Right.
So my basic solution for Zoom is I put my camera further back for Zoom, just move my drum closer to the closet, and I ask the students to do the same. It fixes most of the problems, but there might be a few that I need to start sending in pre-recorded versions or pre-recorded.
Have any of you guys used the Marco Polo app?
No.
There's an app, it's free. It's called Marco Polo. A lot of my students love that for sending recordings back and forth, because it's kind of like a text app, only you send videos. And the sound quality is not perfect, but it will let you, like a lot of times when somebody's sending you a video, you can only text like a minute of something, or it'll tell you it's too big of a file, or if you send it through Facebook, they want you to also abbreviate it. And but on the Marco Polo app, if they're sending it through that app, it can be as long as they want it to be, and you just kind of can go back and forth with it. Like if I have a lesson that, say for some reason, the internet connection goes wonky or something, we'll get on the Marco Polo app and they send me a video and I can send a video right back, and it's all kind of in real time. So anyway, I found that app to be pretty helpful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of, kind of realize the limitations of the technology. And, I think about, even my own experiences teaching and what I'm hearing with you all. You have to be very delicate, Stacy, you and Sandy, but with your word choice, so that you can not discourage a student when you're not getting what you need, and it's not the student's fault, and it's not your fault. It's the limitations of this technology. So you got to be creative and be looking for other ways to, get to the same, end goal, even if it's not, your first, impulse of, hey, just play this for me and I'll listen and I'll be able to give you feedback. So I think that's really good. And to hear is, think through different apps and, again, just realizing the limitations of technology there. Jim, you kind of anticipated, the next question. does anybody else have any other kind of preferred platforms? Or I'm just curious, what is, your main choice? Maybe lightning, not really lightning around, but if we can go around, what do you primarily teach lessons on, and what do you think the biggest strength of that platform is? Pam?
I use Zoom, and for me, the biggest strength is the screen share. So when I do theory pages with my students or a writing assignment, I can write it out or help them write it out. If it's my 4-year-old, we have little mazes, so I help her with the maze. I show her and she copies. So I love that part with Zoom. It works really well.
Okay. Sandy, what about you?
All right, so I'm with Jim. FaceTime for me, overall, big picture, it's the most solid. I use it, but if I'm in the middle, I've done this today in the middle of a lesson. I don't have any idea what was going on at FaceTime. I said, hey, I'm gonna call you on Zoom, let's switch. I mean, stopped in the middle, went to Zoom. It was like magic. It was a great thing. But FaceTime first, Zoom second, Skype. And I actually have one student that's doing telephone. They have no other resource. I never would, and this is an adult. Again, not the perfect thing. Jim, I think it was you earlier saying you really have to use your ear. So try to teach someone when you're really using that ear going, was that a D flat? Was it a D sharp? I mean, it's a great skill builder for us. So I think whatever that format is, figuring out the way that format works. But FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, telephone,
Okay. Jim agrees. Stacy, what about you?
I use Zoom for a lot of the same reasons that Pam does. I like to be able to do the screen share, the games, things like that. I like to be able to switch back and forth quickly from one camera to another. But I think it kind of can depend upon your focus. Like I said, a lot of my, going into the lesson, a lot of times my goal is, okay, I have to structure this in a way to really maintain interest for the length of this lesson and get the teaching in. So I have to have a lot of different tools at my disposal, and the Zoom offers me that.
Mm-hmm.
One more thing about Zoom, if I may.
Please.
Is that you can actually take another device of yours. Like I could take my cell phone, call into my Zoom lesson, and show them pedal. Put it by the feet and show them my pedal with another camera, or do above the piano to see the keys. So there's a lot of different options out there with Zoom.
That's true, because I have several students who are using Zoom, and they will use their iPad to get, they will put their iPad on their book rest, and so we can screen share while they're using their iPad, but they will use a cell phone to show me themselves and their piano. So we use both. And that gives the student 2 camera angles as well. But if you use Zoom like that, you do need to know that unless you have the paid version, it will cut you off at like 40 minutes. So if you're doing longer lessons and you need the multiple camera angles and you want more than one person to log in, it costs $15 a month.
Well worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So to me, I'm kind of hearing the same thing. The choice of software is very much like the choice of the equipment. If you're comfortable with it, you'll find ways to maximize the best use of it and be creative. All right. So looking forward, I'm hopeful that, in who knows how long, but in a matter of weeks, maybe a month, we'll start to move towards whatever our new normal is, as far as being able to get out in public and, eventually look towards in face-to-face lessons. How do you think all of this is going to change your studio down the road for, I don't know what to call normal, but for, after this? How is this pandemic and our move to online lessons, how's that going to change how you conduct your studio?
I've had this in my policy letter because I don't do makeup lessons. I don't have time in my schedule. I've had the possibility of Skyping, doing however it was worked for them in my policy letter for probably 5-6 years. And not that many people have taken advantage of it. I may have just done myself a disservice because I'm thinking this is going to bite me when we all get back together. But rightfully so. I don't want them to miss either, especially if you just got a little bit of a sniffle or it's ugly and rainy out. Don't get out, call me, let's do this. So I think it's going to change the face of more online lessons in the future. I don't think it will be all of my students by any means, but I do think I will have more online lessons sporadically through the year for different reasons to meet my students' needs.
And I agree with Sandy. I've got that in my policy also. And every time my students would call and say they wanted a lesson online or FaceTime, I'd cringe. But now I can say, yeah, sure. Not a problem.
Yeah. I'm the exact same way. Like, Mondays are my days. I was telling our panelists before we got started, Mondays are my one house call day that I have left, and I have a coterie of clients out in Collierville. I live and operate out here in Midtown. And right now, I am not missing that drive out to Collierville and back every Monday. And further, in my policy as it stands is an inclement weather policy that basically says if Shelby County schools are closed due to inclement policies, then so too is the student, and we'll figure out down the road what that looks like in terms of makeup or whatever. Effective fall 2020, it's any event that Shelby County Schools is closed for inclement weather, you're getting on FaceTime, we're getting on Zoom. It is all systems go. That will not stop us. And the other thing that I can see too is, we're in a globally connected world, more so than ever. I could see this being a possibility where I never have to meet a student face to face, and I could be working with somebody on the West Coast or in Europe or whatever, if I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
I had, when I started posting on Facebook that I was doing lessons online, immediately, like a friend that I have that is in Virginia had posted something, and now all of a sudden I have a student who is registering from Illinois. And so it's a brand new student, and I think it's going to open some doors. And I think with the snow policies and the inclement weather policies, gives us all the opportunity to not work ourselves to death if we have a week of snow at the end of that to make up those lessons, and the opportunity to really be able to tell parents, please don't bring a sibling if another has the flu. And things like that. But I think that it's already changed the way that I teach. Like what Sandy was saying earlier about how careful she has to be with her speech and things like that. I had told Ben on the phone, and you guys can't throw tomatoes at me through the computer, so I'm just going to say it. I was really shocked when my very first week of teaching online about how many of my younger students were not clear as to what a measure was. Because we're all pointing and this and that. And so I know in the end of this, there is so many little holes that I've noticed over the past few weeks in my teaching that I am going to be a much better teacher for having done this. Because now all of my students know what a measure is. They know how to label their measures, because that's the first thing we do when we start a song now or a piece. And it's, anyway, so I think it's going to make them more careful with what they're doing. It makes me more careful with how I explain things. And I'm just really, from this point forward, analyzing my music a little more detailed in the very beginning is going to be part of the way that I teach. And I'm not saying that it wasn't part of the way that I taught before, but I didn't do it like this.
Fascinating. Let me ask you as this, and anybody can jump in, and this is not in my list of questions, but what are you learning about your students now because you're doing online lessons instead of face-to-face?
I love being able to go into their homes. I'm finding that to be fascinating. I can tell more about their touch coming from their piano to my piano. I can tell more about the sound that they're hearing on their instrument versus what my instruments are bringing to their table. Their surroundings, what room they're in. I mean, I'm learning so much about the way they learn, sitting at their instruments, their way they sit at their instruments versus the way that I prefer for them to sit here. Just huge. And like Stacy said, measure? What measure? Count 1, 2. I mean, are you kidding me? I was embarrassed. You don't know, so yeah, no, it's shown me things in my teaching that I've spoon-fed and I didn't realize.
Wow. Thanks for being honest.
I have a student who every lesson comes in with his wrist practically broken. And every week it's like, no bubble, no bubble. Well, now that I'm seeing him work at home, he's got a little Casio keyboard on top of the dining room table, and the only way he can play is like this. That's all he can do. In my studio, we've had to be, I worked on some rhythm with a student today. It was kind of an intermediate 8th note, 2/16, little Tchaikovsky old French song thing. And she doesn't like when she has to count and play, but I forced her to do it because I'm like, I'm not there to sit next to you. You got to do this. And then we start getting really creative because it turns out that 8th, 2/16 rhythm with a quarter is flat, timpa, curved. Flat, timpa, curved. And so now all of a sudden, we're treating public health and rhythm pedagogy in one thing, right? And she's a middle schooler, early high schooler. She's hearing these phrases all the time, right? So that's what I'm learning. Like, I am seeing firsthand, oh, that's what your practice environment looks like, which means what I'm now seeing on that camera is what you do every single time you go to practice.
Thanks, Jim. Stacy, Pam, anything to add?
I have students who are going to be upgrading at the end of all of this. I'm just saying.
That bad, huh?
That everybody's practicing on, and I'm like, oh Lord.
I want to add one more thing. One thing I'm learning about my students is they actually really like piano.
Yes.
They really, like, they are working so hard. And I tell them at the end of every lesson, like, I'm so proud of you for sticking with this, especially when your world is upside down, and my little kids, they may not know what that means, but, the middle schoolers and high schoolers, they definitely know, especially my kid who's a senior, like, she's feeling the brunt of this,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they need a lot of praise, the kids, for what they're doing.
Huge opportunity here to be empathetic and really, just build, that teacher-student relationship is special. It's not like anything else out there. And so when you have the opportunity that they trust you enough to turn on a camera in their home at the piano that maybe they know is out of tune, or, whatever else, I mean, what a privilege that is. So, I don't think teachers take that for granted, but I think that this opportunity probably really highlights, reminds you guys of that. Anybody doing anything really fun in the middle of all of this? Just, hey, we can't get together, so we're going to just add something fun, because we're having to meet online.
Every week I'm trying to do something, send something. Okay, wait a minute. We are talking about with our students, right?
Yes. Well, we could answer both. Okay, but in the context
I'll be
of
working
teaching.
in my garden. I've really enjoyed that. No, actually, one of their assignments this week for my kids, we'll see how this comes back. I've asked them all to take a piece they've played. I don't care, old, new, I don't care, but I want them to make it entertaining. I want them to record it and send it to me. So it could be, I have one kid that did Sorcerer's Apprentice last year. So I think he's going to run with that, something like that. I've got one kid that's playing the theme from Harry Potter. So he was going, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, just take a piece of paper and make a pointy hat and go get a stick out of the yard and let that be your, your magic, your magic stick. So trying to think of something that helps them be creative, that helps their parents, that helps them. Trying to take care of my parents too, because I actually sent the email out to my parents. So trying to do something every week that's maybe not the norm. I think I have Piano Maestro in the studio. So they were assigned that as part of their theory. So trying to do, I don't do a lot of the apps. I'm really selfish with my time on the lessons. I don't like to use those apps in my lessons unless the kids make me crazy. But as a rule, I try not to do that. Yes, everyone smiles. But I do make assignments off of that. And when I send them home their notes saying, hey, I want you to do this and this and this on that app. So that, kind of trying to do something like that.
Great.
I'm doing my online bingo party still. So when we have bingo parties every few days, whether that's rhythm bingo or little group theory that on Zoom, and then and then I always put in there that like hats are optional, and then I kind of I decorate myself and I'll teach like this, or next week I'm planning to teach with a crayon on my head, but so I try to do just little things to make I keep a whole collection of stickers stuck to the edge where I give them out and try to do little fun things that they enjoy. But I think I like your idea, Sandy, about having them be really creative with something that they've learned. That's really fun. My fun stuff has been trying to basically like connect my studio and connect the kids and connect the families. And it's kind of fun because when we play bingo, a lot of times it won't be just the students. It'll be the whole family gathered around the table with the bingo cards, siblings and everything. So, but that's what we've been doing.
I haven't thought of anything creative myself, but I've got a lot of good ideas now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull up some questions here and see what's been coming in during the chat. Okay. Here's a question. Earlier, Stacy, you actually mentioned something. Maybe you can speak to this again. After this social distancing period, what percentage of your practice continues or converts to online instruction? If I'm understanding the question, I think maybe what percentage of your studio moved to online lessons? Stacy, you mentioned earlier just how you even just introduced that.
I will have some students because my studio is more of a specialty studio. I have some parents who drive quite a ways, even like 40 minutes or so. And I have a feeling that I will have a certain percentage of my families that will opt to primarily go with online lessons after this. And a few months ago, I would have thought that would have been a problem. But now that I'm seeing how involved the parents are in the lessons, and the parents are there to help my students practice. So it's actually pretty neat to be teaching the parent and the child at the same time, and then they just kind of carry that on. But I think that I could possibly have 3 or 4 of my students that are current that will stick with online lessons, and I probably will be picking up more new students.
Yeah, I think we heard that earlier from some other folks. How about here's one, maybe this isn't what the question was asking, but it's got me wondering, how did you make the pitch to your family saying, hey, we're going to go to all online lessons? I know I've heard from some teachers, they weren't quite clear, what would happen when they said, hey, we're going to do online lessons. How many people would come over or how many people would just drop? How do you guys introduce that to your families? Pam?
It really wasn't an option. I just said we're gonna do online lessons until this blows over. And during that process, I lost one student whose parent just said she didn't want to do online lessons, period. Had nothing to do with money. So she had to pay a cancellation fee. The other students, they lost all their jobs, so they couldn't, but everyone else was on board. So I had, out of 23 students, I lost two, but I gained one. I got another student that it was too far for her to drive, and now with the opportunity opened up for online lessons.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, same thing. I did not present it as an option. I didn't even say, if this is not for you, then just let me know. The first email that I sent was when we were still thinking it could be possible to do in-person lessons, like, oh, we're gonna like sterilize everything. But then once, what I said to my clients, and I sent this about halfway through Shelby County School spring break, was the CDC is recommending social distancing. In light of that, we are moving all of our lessons to online teaching. What I also did was, before I sent that email out, I called a handful of my clients who I really trust, who I knew that no matter what, they were gonna stick with me, and said, hey, I'm thinking about moving online. What do you think? And I called 3 clients like that, and they were like, yes, yes, and yes, for whatever their reason was. I only lost one student in transition, but that is because that person works high up in Shelby County government, and they've got a lot on their hands right now. It's an adult client that has more important things to do. And they had paid through the end of the term, so what I told that person was, I will hold your spot for as long as you need me to, and you got this number of lessons paid for, and we'll just pick it back up when we can do this, and they were okay with that. And then, like I said, like for Pam, I was gonna do a summer jumpstart program, I still am, but one of those summer jumpstart, kids who wanted to start lessons this summer, I said, you want to start lessons now? So I haven't, in terms of net losses, I haven't lost anybody, because I told my clients, both in an email and individual text messages, this is what we're doing. Please let me know your preference of venue.
Okay, great. So a couple comments, I'm seeing some other nodding, so I think we kind of answered this one. Let's see. Do your students have a theory book? If not, how do you send them theory lessons? I think we answered that earlier. Sounds like we got a lot of scanning. We've actually increased the amount of theory that we're doing. So here's one. Have any of you ever held an online recital, for example, with Zoom?
It's in the works. It's in the works.
Okay. Does anyone have any ideas for better sound quality coming from the students on FaceTime? What about using external microphones? So is anybody using any just separate audio hardware?
I, in fact, tried that with my buddy who's on faculty at Rhodes. We tried doing AirPods, and he said, I can hear your voice, but I can't hear your piano at all. So I think at this juncture, unless you had like professional quality microphones, you just gotta grapple with the limitations of technology.
Okay.
Now, I have had a student use their earpods, not their earpods, but the other ones that plug in, and they put a hoodie on. I hadn't put a hoodie on, and I could hear better. There was less echo going on.
Right.
So
That hoodies, yeah.
Okay.
The on the Zoom, we were talking about the limitations on the Zoom. The Zoom is set up to catch voices. That's where our limitation is. You have to go in and change your setting so it's not blocking out the ambient noise, because from Zoom's perspective, the piano is ambient noise. Okay, so that's what you have to go in and change that in your Zoom app to make that work better. But I still think, guys, I have 2 iPads in here. I have all kinds of equipment, but I know you can do this with one phone and let it work for you. That one phone is what you can hear and what you can do.
Yeah. All right. Okay, we're getting short on time here. Just an observation: acoustic pianos that are out of tune don't help much. No, they don't. But we kind of touched on that. Um, so I guess I'll kind of throw this out there. Any other final words of wisdom for teachers who are just new to all of this, or who are, trying to get the most, effectiveness for their students? Anything we haven't touched on that you would throw out there?
There's a couple of people that are really have the whole setup for teaching online lessons. Carly Walton is one. If you looked up Carly Walton online piano lessons, she has a course that she's actually donating to teachers, and you can pay anywhere from $1 to whatever you want. And it's really great for people that are starting out with online music. And also Tim Topham and Nicola Canton have a website called what's it called? Music Piano.
Tom, he just changed the name of it.
Yes, he did. Was Inner Circle,
Top,
but now Top
yeah.
Music. Top
Yeah.
Music.
Yeah.
And they have a wonderful online tutorial on how to set up your camera and so forth.
At
So
the
those
end
would
of
be great
this,
for-
yeah, at the end of this, maybe if you'll send that to us, Pam, then we can send it out with the recording, those
Okay,
resources, links to that. Great.
sure.
Thank you. Anybody else?
At Evergreen, we've been saying, Evergreen Presbyterian, our staff has been saying the last couple weeks, don't waste a crisis. In other words, we're using that phrase to say, well, since we're living in unprecedented times, let's just throw caution to the wind and really try some weird stuff. And so I would say to all y'all who are looking at these wild changing times where everything changes hour by hour, I would say to you, if you've ever had an idea that you thought, I don't know if it would work, but I want to try it, as long as it's online, through Zoom or FaceTime, y'all just do it, just try it. I mean, all of our clients, I think, or the majority of them, are understanding that everything has changed. And this is just your time. Like, don't be apologetic. Just get out there, try something new. Throw it on the wall, see what sticks, is my advice. Just don't be afraid to try it.
That's great. Stacy?
Oh, I'm just using the extra time that, well, especially like right now in the evenings, my evenings are kind of free. I've not had that before, where everybody is kind of drifting to the daytime and stuff like that. And I've just been using a lot of my evenings and weekends, kind of doing what Jim says, just getting real creative with things, and learning how to use different new technology, and learning how to make videos for my students, learning how to make tutorials, learning how to, last week I was messing around with GarageBand and iMovie, and just to see what kind of combinations of things I can come up with. And I think it's fun, like Sandy was talking about, encourage our students to be creative with the things that we already have. Take the ideas that you already have and take them to the next level.
It's fabulous.
See what you can come up with.
All right. Well, that is all the questions that I have. And I think, let's see, I'm looking here. Seeing a question here. Do lap mics work for piano lessons? Yes, I'm sure. Is anybody using just the built-in, question just came through, the built-in microphone just on the laptop for lessons?
Yes, they do. I've got several students who are using their laptops, and as well as anything.
Perfect. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for watching tonight and asking great questions. Tried to get to everyone that I could to understand. If I missed something, I apologize. Please reach out, and I'll put you in touch with the panel. We'll see if we can figure out if you need help. We'll see if we can get you pointed the right direction. I want to thank our panel for participating and everybody who's tuned in. Also, I want this to be an opportunity. If you've got ideas for, future topics that we should do this again and cover something, please reach out and let me know. This is the first time we've done anything like this, but does not have to be the last time. There was one question about the Zoom recitals. I wanted to put one plug out there. I know a lot of folks are grappling with just kind of, we call it the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth to, how many things you can think of reinventing here. If you are looking for performance opportunity for your students, actually I have two for teachers. One is we're currently through the April 15th hosting an online music festival. You can encourage your students to post a performance on Facebook and tag us, Amro Music, and you. And actually that'll benefit you as the teacher. You can see the details on our Facebook page. But also, if you're looking for a recital opportunity, and we know we can't get together, Amro is going to be more than happy to handle all the logistics of hosting like a virtual recital. We'd create a custom YouTube playlist, record a welcome message with you to your studio, and then just solicit performances. That's something we put together, kind of a turnkey package for teachers, just because we know you're kind of grappling with, as we've heard, a common theme, how much extra preparation time this takes. So we want to be good neighbors to you right now. And I hope tonight has been helpful. It's been a learning experience for me. So thank you, panel. Thank you for everybody for the questions. And I think that's all we've got. We're a little over an hour, but I think it was worth it. So, all right. Well, everybody stay healthy, stay safe, stay in touch.